Okay, good. I put together a quick little presentation here to go through and tell you what we're doing with Resilient Design Collaborative. And so Peter was kind enough to invite me to explain a little bit what we're about, what we're doing here, this new initiative from a crazy architect. So um, what I want to talk about is, of course, resilience, and make sure we're all on the same page when I talk about the definition for resilience is simply the ability to resist, absorb, recover from, or successfully adapt to adversity or changing conditions. I've been working toward resilient design strategies for quite a few years now, and I provide a lot of free educational seminars for architects, engineers, and other people in our region here and around the country as I can get access. But the big problem, of course, is there is a lot of lack of resilient infrastructure. It's just um, not dominant, obviously, because it's a new strategy. But uh, what I want to point out is, I'm sure I'm talking to the choir here. I know a lot of these things, uh, but just to set the framework and the ground level so that we're all on the same page here. That this is a chart listing all the billion-dollar declared disaster events in the United States since 1980 through 2022. And you can see these are various different events, but realize that each of these are at least $1 billion in order to qualify as a disaster event. And you can obviously see what the trend is. And, you know, I say, of course, obviously, this is not sustainable. We have to do something. And so the needed actions, of course, is to reverse global warming because that is the global warming is what's driving climate change, of course. Um, but in the meantime, I mean, we're so far down the road, assuming that governments do really take action, people take this climate change seriously and really start digging in. There's a lot of things going on, but I still feel like government agencies are still behind on this initiative. And so it's going to be a while, if at all, that we can reverse the impacts of climate change. Therefore, I say resiliency is the new sustainability because we have to prepare and be ready for what's coming, and at the same time try to reverse that trend. So um, I want to talk a little bit about my background and what I've been doing and why I am where I am. My firm is Tarazia PC Architecture. I'm located in Roanoke, Virginia. I initiated this company in 2011 when I left my firm. I was a partner in one of the largest architectural firms in the state, RMM Architects. And so I decided to leave the firm. My wife thought I was crazy, but I did it anyway. And so I've been primarily doing small projects and little projects here and there, but main thing I've been doing is providing educational seminars on various things. So a little background. I've been involved in architecture across the United States and spent 6 years in the Middle East and Saudi Arabia for 6 years. And then, so I've been doing all this since about 1970. I have a Bachelor of Architecture and a Bachelor of Science Environmental degrees from the University of Oklahoma in 1974. I've been greatly passionate about energy conservation since 1974. If you all might recall, in 1974, there was the Arab oil embargo that caused a lot of issues. That was the same year I graduated from college and moved to Portland, Oregon, and so I got deep into energy conservation, and I have ever since. My educational sessions that I've been offering, I've been involved with USGBC um, since 2004. I actually did the first LEED certified projects in Roanoke City, in Roanoke County. Um, and my educational section since 2011 has been on sustainable paving, stormwater management, low carbon concrete strategies, and high performance building design. Then I've been a board member and past chair of Resilient Virginia since 2018. So I've got over 54 years of practical experience in architecture, including what I call talking the talk for the last 12 years uh, in in, um, in all these educational sessions. So it's kind of what I call talking the talk. So I'm all about promoting high performance buildings. And when I do these educational sessions with architects and engineers, They all seem to be on board. Said, great, we love it. I said, I offer a free design assist. I'll offer you on the front end of a project. I'd be glad to come in and talk with you and talk to your clients and educate them, whatever you want to do to help you promote resilient design and high performance buildings. And I never get any calls. No one ever asks. And I said, I have a pretty good hourly rate, but I'm doing this for free if you'll just ask. So I get very few calls, but I started calling back. I said, what's going on? Are you guys doing this? They actually say, no. And I say, why not? And they say, because the client says it costs too much. And I say, yeah, so I get a little upset about that approach. So, I said, how can we overcome this obstacle? Because I see that as a primary obstacle to moving forward with these strategies. So I said, well, maybe it's time to walk the walk. Enough talking the talk. So that was kind of my initial reaction or way of getting involved in starting this, what I call resilient design collaborative. I said, what if we started talking with the firms and getting in front of them and finding a mechanism or a vehicle that we could use to um, help architects and engineers promote and design resilient facilities. And like I said, I say that resilient design, I think resilience is the new sustainability. The RDC organization, I want to go through the vision. Our vision is that all building projects are designed to create resilient and sustainable communities. Our mission is to work collaboratively with the building design and construction community to promote and create sustainably resilient projects that resist, absorb, recover from, or successfully adapt to man-made and natural disasters, which of course is the resilience definition. So our action plans have 3 plans to get us to our mission and realize our vision. And that is, the one is to organize a group or groups of architects and others to meet virtually or in person to discuss means and methods to implement appropriate resilient design strategies for their actual projects. And some people, Peter and Jane, are been participating in this group. My action plan 2 is to create a library of resilient design case studies for others to reference as examples to influence their project design efforts. And thirdly is to expand the network of AEC professionals nationwide to collaborate and create resilient facilities that save money, improve people's lives, and assure a sustainable future, which I've referred to as the triple bottom line. So resilience by design, what's the status? Where are we right now in this effort? Well, we conduct Zoom meetings on the first Tuesday of each month, and they'll go from 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. So we've had our January 9 meeting. The purpose of that was to kind of discuss our purpose and organizational discussions. Then that was our very first meeting. February 6th, our second meeting, we went over what we call talking points about how to overcome resistance to change, because people are just naturally resistant to change in most cases. And so how do you overcome that discussion point? So we talked about that a little bit. And then our last meeting this month, which is March 5th, we did a project kickoff, a mock project kickoff meeting where we were prioritizing disaster resistance goals. And the next meeting, we're looking to try to implement resilient design strategies more, but what I'm probably going to be doing is continue some mock meetings so that we can understand the process about discussing these points and getting buy-in from the stakeholders for these strategies. So that's kind of what we're trying to get going to. So currently in these meetings, we have up to 16 participants. We've got Arise US executive members. We got AIA Virginia executives and members, Virginia architects, New York architects, landscape architect planner. We got geodata specialists, global urban development executive, and climate friendly insurance executives that have been participating in our meetings. So hoping to continue that. So I talked about, team success through teamwork. And I want to relate a quick story here. I think I talked about this in our last meeting. So Peter and Jane, please bear with me on this. And I asked the question, how the Crystal Cathedral came to be. And I don't know if you're all familiar with the Crystal Cathedral. Uh, but it was built back, I guess, late 70s, early 80s. Um, and Dr. Robert Schuller, an evangelist who conducted his sermons in drive-in theaters in California for a long time, was very successful, decided to build a church. So he bought some land and he hired who he thought was the best architect in the world. And this picture, the guy was scratching his head. That's the architect. Uh, his uh, his name is Philip Johnson, a very famous architect at the time. So Dr. Schuller hired him to be his architect. Um, Schuller I was watching this program and he was relaying the story about how this came about. So he said that Philip Johnson had come up with the concept design, was presenting it to him there at his place in California. I think Johnson's office was in Chicago. And when he presented it, Johnson stopped and being, cognizant of what was going on. He said, "Well, I can see that you're not excited about what I'm showing you." And so Schuller said, "Well, yeah, I'm not real excited about it, but who am I to question the great architect?" And I liked what Schuller said Johnson's response was to that. He said, "Architecture is too important to be left just to the architect. So tell me what's going on. What is it you don't like?" He said, "Well, I was used to working outside and I envisioned a glass building." Well, Johnson comes back and says, "Hey, but you're on a fault line. You know, there's some real design issues related to that." So what happened then? So Schuller says, "Well, I don't know how to do that, but I thought you could figure it out." So Johnson did. He went back, redesigned the concept, and presented it. And of course, it came to be the Crystal Cathedral, which you see now, which I find is a quite inspiring space. It's not energy efficient kind of facility that I would be promoting. Um, it's probably high maintenance, but again, it's a phenomenal space and a great piece of architecture. So this is the case where the client actually inspired the architect. And I always say that great projects really are inspired by great clients, even more so than the architect. So that was an interesting observation I had at that time, but I've learned some more things since then. I'll talk about that in a minute. But here's an interesting quote from Roger Lewis, and he said, "Some architects think of clients only as sources of work and income, but most good architecture is in fact the result of successful design collaboration between a talented architect and an enlightened, motivated client." And I think here's the case where the client was the motivational force behind that design. So, but since then, I got some lessons learned from this. I I think that Johnson did what a lot of architects do is they're anxious to design, they jump into design a little bit too soon. So the lesson here is that the design community need to better understand their clients and educate their clients and stakeholders in that sometimes they don't take the time to do. That requires analyzing and prioritizing performance goals before you begin design. So the plan and design for high performance buildings, I like to promote what I call the integrated design process. And that is where you take all of your stakeholders, anybody that might influence the building, the design, in any way, and have good input on that should be coming together early in the design and planning process so that we can uncover all issues um, before we start design and have to reback up everything. I compare that to what a doctor does in his diagnosis. If you see a doctor, you might tell them your symptoms, and then the doctor would probably do some exams, right? They're going to diagnose what's going on before they offer a solution for you, before they offer a medication, prescription, or before a surgical procedure. They're not going to just start working on you without understanding exactly what's going on. And I think architects really need to do a better job of that than what they traditionally do. And the way to demonstrate the importance of this, here's a diagram that demonstrates the impact and the necessity to uncover big issues early on. Because in this diagram, you see on the left side, you have your pre-design phase, and as you go along the x-axis, you see the timeline in which the schematic design's done, design development, construction, occupancy. So the farther you go down the line to start making changes to the basic design, the the more disruptive it is, the less likely you're going to do those things, and the most more it costs to do that, both in time and money. So it's really critical that we front load the effort of a project design so that we're in that optimal zone early on and uncover the big issues and set the goals properly and budget properly for the project. And I like to say this is applying my 90-10 rule. My 90-10 rule is 90% of a building's performance is determined in the first 10% of design. Once you pass that stage, it's very difficult to make changes. So if someone starts to design a project in the traditional way they always do, then later they say, well, we want to add resiliency, we want to add sustainability features. It's going to cost. It's going to cost a lot in a different way. So that has to be integrated and considered very much up front. So budget is always a big concern, right? If people say, well, it costs too much. Well, what we want to do, of course, is encourage people to do a calculation, say, what does it cost to do things, to have certain design features, and what are the benefits of that feature, and then what are the beneficial returns, so that we can evaluate what is the financial benefit of that issue, and what is the non-financial benefit or cost of that issue. So this is kind of outlining the typical design process. Step one is to define the problem. Step two is collect information. You brainstorm and analyze ideas. You develop solutions. And then you present your ideas and solutions to your client for feedback. And then from that, you make improvements based upon that feedback and then continue the process. Well, what I find is that very often the engagement that needs to happen in these three places in that process is where stakeholder meetings and our resilient design collaborative needs to engage, provide assistance. That is to help, and the step one is to help define the problem, and then to brainstorm and analyze solutions, and then to be involved in that feedback. The step two and step four are kind of be done in the office. The architect and their team and engineers, they all kind of do their thing, but then these are the three phases of the design process where the resilient design collaborative can be impactful to the decisions on the project. And during this process, we want to come up with brainstorming ideas. Always compare what we're doing to return on investment. Is there a long-term long-term return for the investment you might make in resilient strategies? And so often people are just say, well, as long as I meet code, that's all I need to do. People need to remember that building codes are formed for life safety purposes. It's to help people exit a building safely or out of a building before it burns down or blown away or whatever, or firefighters can fight a fire. The building codes, like in Virginia now, we are starting to introduce resiliency features into the building codes so that we can preserve the buildings as well, because we find that is the critical thing that has been overlooked for a long time, forever on building codes. So that is coming, and hopefully we'll see those reinforced more into the future. So disaster risk reduction is what we want to set up our project goals. And of course, we're talking about climate hazards, that we know about. I add to that the man-made hazards such as terrorism. We have mass shootings as a regular basis in this country anymore. Lots of different activities, internal and external. And then we learned a lot from the pandemic, right? Infections can be a really big issue. And not only that, but with his warmer climates, we're going to see some different infestation of insects moving further north than what people are used to, although there's some concern about loss of insect population. So what we want to try to do is help our clients, help architects to identify the risks and hazards for projects so we can prioritize that, help an owner prioritize that for their project. So you want to identify the risk, what might go wrong, and then assess and analyze how those might be applied, and then what's the mitigation and fallback planning. And then, of course, long term, how do we maintain that on an ongoing basis? So it's risk management, identify, assess, and plan. And that's kind of what we're trying to do, is help clients identify those and then prioritize those into their project, so that when they're evaluating all the other goals and such they might have and priorities for their project, that hopefully they can keep these resiliency related goals high on their list and make sure they stay and keep them evaluated for budget constraints issues. And as shown in this image here in Mexico Beach that happened recently, the hurricanes, we can and must do better. I mean, there's an example there of a house that was built to high performance resilient standards. It survived the storm quite well. Nobody else did. We got to do better than that. So, in conclusion, I like this quote by Oscar Niemeyer, a pretty famous architect some time back. The architect's role is to fight for a better world where we can produce an architecture that serves everyone and not just a group of privileged people. And that's why I say, as advocates for community sustainability, we need to advocate more for buildings that will help our community and survive the long term, rather than just be weak and cheap. I said the only people that benefit from weak and cheap construction are the building owners and the builders, because they if they're destroyed, well, your insurance might cover it if they're covered by insurance, and then also the builders, they're fine because they can build again and just keep making money and so forth. So we've got to find a way to preserve our infrastructure and not keep rebuilding it. So I see the resilience as the new sustainability. There's no greater blow to sustainability than destruction. Teamwork, it's time to walk the walk. I preferred and always promote the integrated design process, and remember my 90-10 rule. Prioritize disaster risk reduction goals for every project, and then create sustainably resilient communities is our goal. So in closing, I say, anybody wants to join us, we're welcoming to anybody want to join our group or split off and make other groups that are doing the same thing. We can use our initiation as a template for other activities. We must act now. We really can't wait. And so at this point, any questions?
Steve, that's great. Thank you very much. On the 90-10 rule,